afternoon by the time we start. Yeah.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thank you so much. You saved the day.
So when you're preparing your cross notes, then do you write the question out in full?
Yes.
Like just exactly as you?
Absolutely, I'll write full script.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you write it? If say I would. Do you more like say we will? Do you write we'll? So it sounds more like flowing, or say we will.
Hello everyone. We're now going to commence our debate one discussion. If I could kindly ask anyone at the back in the overspill section to move to the front or find a chair nearer the front, that'd be great.
Just in case it's. Yeah.
I'd like to now introduce our debaters on the topic of virtual hearings. Should be at the default mode of hearings in the post-pandemic world. The debate team for virtual hearings comprises of Sarah Kololat Aranjo. Sarah is a partner at Al Tamimi & Company in Dubai and regularly advises and represents clients in arbitration and arbitration-related court proceedings across the MENA region arising out of inbound, outbound investments. Sarah also sits as an arbitrator and acts as a mediator. Alex Clements. Alex is the director of Bond Salon, based in the UK, a world-leading witness familiarization training company. Since March 2020, Bond Salon have delivered virtual workshops for some 3,500 witnesses. This leaves Alex very well placed to discuss the matter of virtual hearings. The debate team against virtual hearings comprises of Peter Nosto. Peter is a senior construction lawyer at DLA Piper, based in Dubai. Peter advises a variety of clients on construction and engineering disputes arising out of major residential and infrastructure projects. Peter has acted in international and domestic arbitrations, commercial litigation, adjudications, and mediation. Zoe O'Sullivan, QC. Zoe is a senior counsel at Searle Court Chambers in London and specialises in international commercial arbitration and litigation. Zoe has been recommended as leading silk in commercial dispute resolution, information technology, and international arbitration at counsel. Zoe is regularly appointed as a sole presiding and co-arbitrator in arbitrations under the LCIA, ICC, and UCITRA rules. This debate will be moderated by Ian Greenhow. Ian is a managing director at Kroll Expert Services, formerly BlackRock Expert Services, and is a quantum expert with 20 years experience in the construction industry as a quantity surveyor. Ian has been appointed as a quantum expert witness under ADCCAC, DIAC, ICC, LCIA arbitration rules on various occasions on projects in the Middle East and Europe.
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to everyone here in the room and joining us online. I am connected. I wasn't being rude earlier. I'm connected to our online members. This is debate number one of the CIArb Young Members Conference as part of Dubai Arbitration Week. And thank you to Mike for the introductions and to the YMG committee in general for putting on such a great event so far. I think it's been really well organised from our perspective, and I know how much effort's gone into organising everything that's going on today for people in the room and online. So thanks very much to the committee, to Aaron and the team. So the motion for this first debate is virtual hearings should be the default mode of hearings in the post-pandemic world. And we have an esteemed panel of debaters who will try to sway you one way or the other. So before I go through the rules, I'd just like to remind you that yourselves in the room and those online can play a part in the debate by voting. Details are on the screen behind me. If you're online and you can't see this, I think it's in the presentation you received. The details are slido.com, and the code is #019432, and this will take you to a link where you can vote. So please log on and do vote now. And we'll have a vote now and then a vote at the end of the debate, and the winning team will be the team that has swayed the most of you. So for the motion, we have Sarah Aranjo and Alex Clements, and against Zoe O'Sullivan, QC, and Peter Anagnostou. The rules are that each debater will have 10 minutes, and we'll go alternately. So Alex will go first for the motion, and then Zoe against, then Sarah for, and finally, last but not least, Peter will be going against the motion. And then after that, we'll have time to take questions and comments from the floor. so, and online. So if you would like to raise a question here in the room, please put your hand up. Before, I think Mike will be going around with the mic. Thank you very much. And online, I've got it here on my app. So just to check that this works, if you are joining us online, perhaps you can just add a comment or question just saying where you're joining from, just so we can see that this is actually working online. And while those sort of come in, I'll just ask a question for everybody in the room. Could you put your hands up, those of you who have been involved with a virtual hearing? Have. Yeah, fantastic. So most people then. So I think we're looking forward to a lively debate. Right, so so maybe we've got shy people online, or it's not coming through for me. Kyle, have we people commenting? 9 people.
Shy people.
Oh, shy people. Okay. All right. No worries. Oh, there is one. Someone's written hello. So, hi. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Saudi, Dubai. Okay, brilliant. They're coming through now. Fantastic. Okay. Right, let's get cracking then. So, speaking first for the motion is Alex Clement. So, Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ian. And I'd like to, I guess, start by...
Alex, sorry, I do apologise. I haven't done the vote, have I? So, if we can get the results up for the initial vote. So 58%. So
There you go.
Okay, so 41% are for the motion, and 59%. Okay. I'm gonna call it at 41.59. Yeah.
Oh,
All right, fantastic. Okay. 60-40. Well, okay, perfect. All right. So, Alex, the floor is
Yes,
yours.
thank you, Ian. Start by echoing, I think, former speakers by saying, delighted to be here. It's my first time in Dubai, so I look forward to getting some recommendations from all of you in the breaks. As Ian said, we're obviously going for, I'll get to it, obviously virtual hearings, or the idea of, it's nothing new, but I think as a result of the events of the last 18 months, the discussion has obviously been accelerated. I think it's important for us to point out at the beginning that we're not suggesting that face-to-face hearings or hybrid hearings don't have a place in a post-pandemic future, but that virtual, and it is time that virtual hearings were considered the default option. In our view, there are 4 main arguments for this. Firstly, that virtual hearings will benefit the parties in the arbitral process. Secondly, that they will provide better access to justice and indeed administration of justice to the parties. Thirdly, that virtual hearings will help progress the environmental and green arbitration movement. And finally, that virtual hearings will help promote better diversity and inclusion in international arbitration. I'm going to start with the element around benefiting the parties to the process. Firstly, I mean, I think it's clear that virtual arbitrations are more efficient, both in terms of time and indeed cost. Obviously, a large-scale commercial arbitration involves numbers of people travelling over from all over the world, heavy costs in terms of travel, hotels, and the like. So in terms of pure costs, it seems to me that virtual hearings are cheaper, and costs are obviously weigh in heavily. There are obviously costs associated with document fees and the like, which may be prohibitive at the moment, but I think moving forward, as the technology is adopted, these fees are going to come down, and as such, it's time to consider that as the default. There's obviously reference as well to a couple of surveys conducted by the Queen Mary University that I think has already been referenced a couple of times today, and Whiting case. 2021, the survey reported that the potential for greater availability of dates for hearings is seen as the greatest positive or benefit of virtual hearings, and indeed that the greater efficiency through the use of technology and greater procedural and logistical flexibility are some of the great benefits of virtual hearings. We at Bond Solon actually, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, conducted a survey with, I think the numbers were around 900 expert witnesses in the UK. We run it every year in conjunction with the Times. Actually, we didn't run it last year, so I think this was the, I guess, the pandemic special. And essentially, we survey them on a number of different areas, but some of the main findings there were that in the last 18 months or so, despite obviously having probably 2 months where there were no hearings going on, some 40% suggested that they'd seen no change in the amount of instructions they were receiving, but the same again reported a significant increase. And the comments here really were down to added flexibility, so allowing experts to pick and choose almost around their day job, and essentially carry out more instructions as a result of the virtual environment. They didn't have to travel, they didn't have to go to client meetings, they could conduct everything in the virtual environment, and it's something that they could fit in essentially. And indeed we can attest to this at Bond Solon in that we essentially, again, despite having 3 months of no hearings whatsoever, recorded one of our busiest years on record with the number of hearings that were going ahead virtually, and the added flexibility afforded, i.e., we didn't have to travel over to the likes of Singapore, Dubai, and effectively could run these sessions that we're delivering for witnesses from the safety of London, by and large. I want to move to witnesses and witness and expert evidence. Now, I'm anticipating a bit of kickback from the likes of Zoe on this, so yeah, I'm ready for it in a moment. But I mean, in our experience, I mean, for those of you who don't know, I should add, Bond Solon, amongst other things, specialise in running witness familiarisation sessions, so primarily for English High Court proceedings, but also obviously in the arbitration context. And in our experience, a relaxed witness is a good witness. And I think one of the main barriers for performance, and it's something perhaps those of you in the room might take for granted, but one of the main barriers for performance for witnesses is the sheer intimidatory nature of the arbitral tribunal, the room, the whole environment. When we work with them in person, we would regularly take witnesses down to the IDRC in London or the Rolls building to really familiarise them with their surroundings as much as anything. And in running virtual hearings, really, you're taking away some of that and allowing witnesses to perform to the best of their ability, to get their knowledge across, whether they're factual witnesses or experts, and not crumble at the first hurdle just through sheer nerves. And again, this is backed up by the comments in the survey that I referenced a moment ago that we ran in conjunction with the Times newspaper. Essentially, around 40% of the respondents who'd undergone cross-examination in the last 18 months or so, of that 40%, 42% of them reported that cross-examination was less aggressive, which I think is potentially to be expected on the screen. But interestingly, about half of them thought that their weight was given their evidence was given the same weight by the tribunal. I admit this is a subjective view, and it'd be interesting to ask the likes of Lara or any other arbitrators in the room as to what they make of virtual evidence. But I think certainly the feedback from the experts that we were interviewing and asking to respond to our survey was that remote hearings are more flexible, the experience of giving evidence is better, and that the same weight was given to their evidence as a live hearing. So really, in that context, there's no real reason to go back to face-to-face as the default. Tie in to this, and I think Anne mentioned this or referenced this earlier in her opening statement, but there's obviously been a lot of work going on at the moment around witness statements, and indeed, perhaps the fallibility of witness evidence. I'm referring, of course, to the task force report on the ICC report on witness memory. There's obviously some practice directions as well in the English High Court that have gone on recently. So we may be seeing, I suppose, something of a re-evaluation of the quality of witness evidence and indeed alternatives there too. So with this in mind, if the efficacy of cross-examination and witness evidence is one of the issues in dispute in relation to remote hearings, then one could argue moving forward it might not necessarily need to be. Cross-examination. Now, I think this is really where I might get some kickback. I think there are, in terms of the camera, I mean, the technology is improving all the time. So high-quality HD screens, video feeds. One could argue that actually you're getting a better view of the non-verbal cues that a witness might give. Obviously, HD audio, you can tune in and really listen to everything that's being said on there. The audio volume can be adjusted to the needs of each participant. If someone's particularly hard of hearing, I'm not suggesting any of our arbitrators in the room are, but yes. You can remotely control cameras, zoom in, and there's also an element of if a witness is testifying under the eyes of counsel or indeed the parties to this dispute, there could be an element of bias, unconscious or not, or interference, I should say, whether they are conscious of that or not. Something that is, of course, absent for remote testimony. I don't know how I'm doing for time.
You have 1 minute left.
1 minute. I will go through quickly then. Obviously, virtual hearings, I mean, in the back set of COP26, there's obviously a big environmental slant at the moment. I've got some stats here, but I think a case study, a medium size, so $30 to $50 million arbitration, reveals the total carbon impact in terms of CO2 was 418,531 cubic emissions, which essentially requires planting more than 20,000 trees to offset its emissions. This is GAR noting this, which is equivalent number to 4 times the number of trees in Hyde Park, or all of the trees in Central Park. I know we'll hear a bit from Lucy Greenwood later, who'll probably expand on that, but it's clear that obviously one of the main benefits of remote hearings is that it cuts down on travel, it's cut down on paper for the documents, and given the, I suppose, the dire prognosis, one could argue that the default should be to improve the processes around online hearings rather than go back to face-to-face as a default. And finally, virtual hearings helping to promote diversity and inclusion in international arbitration. Again, this has been touched on a little bit, but technology-driven changes during the pandemic had obviously accelerated, and I suppose, the democratization of arbitration created opportunities to really level the playing field, where those who may not afford to be able to travel over, or for one reason or another, for face-to-face hearings, can obviously participate online. Am I bang on?
Yes.
Okay, I will leave it there and hand over. Sorry, a lot of points to rattle through.
Thank you very much, Alex. And against the motion is Zoe.
Thank you, Alex. I feel like I should be bursting into song with this handheld mic. Okay, so we all know virtual hearings can work. It seems that we've all been doing them. I've done lots this year. But are they so great that we want to make them the default when we have the option of going back into in-person hearings? We say not. We don't say that there can never be an effective and fair virtual hearing, but we say that the burden of justifying it should fall on the party who wants the virtual hearing. No party should be forced into a virtual hearing by default. And I'll tell you why. Now, we've heard a lot about the supposed time and cost savings of virtual hearings, and we're also told that they're more flexible and more convenient. And we're going to suggest that those supposed advantages are more apparent than real. But our fundamental point is that convenience cannot be allowed to override fairness. And there are real problems with virtual hearings, which mean that they should never be the default option post-COVID. So let's start by being clear what we mean by a virtual hearing. Now, nobody is arguing that case management conferences, procedural hearings, should not be online. We're talking here about witness actions with contested witness evidence from witnesses of fact and experts, and oral submissions from counsel. And I'd also want to distinguish between fully virtual and hybrid hearings. I mean, typically a hybrid hearing will be where the counsel and the members of the tribunal are in the same room, but the witnesses are giving their evidence virtually. And that can address some of the problems of fully online hearings, but we suggest don't fully mitigate the disadvantages. The first point I'd make is around procedural fairness. One of the advantages, of course, of arbitration is its flexibility, but actually most of the institutional rules don't provide much guidance as to what the rules should be. And that allows for flexibility, but it can be a real problem if the parties don't agree the ground rules. And what about, for example, one party insists on the witnesses being visible on a 360-degree camera, but the other one doesn't agree? Or one party wants the witness to be alone in the room, and the other party wants someone, a party representative or a lawyer, to be in the room with them. I mean, these can, you're basically stacking up due process challenges if these points can't be clearly agreed. But what I really want to talk about, and Peter's going to talk about some of the tech and obvious issues and the costs, but I'm going to talk about what you call the human factor. Now, I guess you all know the song from Hamilton, The Room Where It Happens. We are essentially all social beings. You know, we're born for face-to-face, in-person communication, not for communication on screen. And just because we can talk to each other on Zoom doesn't mean that we should. Now, we all know there's a complete difference between watching a live football match and watching it on TV. It's very difficult to define the difference, but we know what it is. It's the sense of excitement, the sense of being part of a community, of working and working together to find a solution in the case of an arbitration. When you replace real-world interaction with a small TV screen, you do get a lot of problems. Now, bearing in mind that before the pandemic, giving evidence by video link was common, but it was still something that required the permission of the tribunal. And that was for good reason, because of the problems with live witness testimony on screen. Now, anyone who's taken part in a virtual hearing knows that you're deprived of all the usual body language and non-verbal cues, which are such a fundamental part of the way we communicate with each other. And instead of seeing the whole person who's giving evidence, the tribunal and counsel are seeing a face on a small screen, and that person may be sitting at some distance from the camera, so their sense that they're removed from the proceedings. And this does affect the tribunal's ability to assess the credibility of a witness where credibility is in dispute, or even where it isn't, such as you may have complex and difficult expert evidence. It's much more difficult for the tribunal to understand it when they're interacting with the witness on a screen. And from the witness's point of view, and we heard from Alex that witnesses feel more relaxed, but that isn't necessarily a good thing. A witness who might be sitting in their own bedroom or their own sitting room giving evidence remotely may not be treating the proceedings with a degree of formality that they deserve. They may feel under less pressure, and that means that they may feel under less pressure to give truthful evidence. And they may feel able to cheat, for example, by looking at their phone. Although, in my own experience, I think that's more a question of perception by the other side that they may be able to cheat rather than something that actually happens in practice. But I think that, from my experience as counsel and arbitrator, I think cross-examination of witnesses may not be the biggest problem. I think that a bigger problem actually is interaction between the tribunal and counsel, because all that counsel can see is a row of small faces at the bottom of the screen, and they can't tell whether the tribunal are hostile, bored, confused, or even asleep. And when I'm a member of the tribunal, I sometimes find it very difficult to interrupt the flow of counsel. I mean, if I've been sort of puzzled by a line of cross-examination and I want to ask counsel where it's going, it's sometimes very difficult. I almost have to jump up and down and wave my hands on the screen because they're unable to read my language. or counsel for the other party might be seeking to intervene for some perfectly good reason, but find some difficult to insert themselves into the process. And another of the challenges posed by video hearings is it does limit the ability of the legal team to work together. In a physical hearing, collaboration is key to success. The lead advocate can ask for support, ask people to find documents. Somebody is carefully noting witness testimony. And all that is more difficult when you're not in the same room together. And I would also point out the chance for interaction between the parties is lost. Those conversations that might happen as the parties are making their way down the corridor for that coffee break, possibly to discuss settlement, or those opportunities are lost. But my next point on the human factor is the well-known phenomenon of Zoom fatigue. Now, researchers at Stanford University have identified 4 features of prolonged Zoom use which lead to fatigue, and they are, firstly, excessive amounts of close-up eye contact. Secondly, seeing yourself constantly on screen, which we all know is horrible. Thirdly, our usual mobility is dramatically reduced. We're just sitting on our chairs for hours. And fourthly, the cognitive load is higher in video conferencing because you have to make a conscious effort to communicate. As I've said, you may have to give a thumbs up to show that you agree with something. And so you're constantly worrying not about just what you're saying, but about all the enhanced body language which you have to use to get your message across. And then add to that the frustration of the inevitable interruption in connections, or dealing with the echo in someone's line, or someone who's speaking too close to their mic. It can all add up to a disagreeable and tiring experience, and not, of course, forgetting the witness whose connection conveniently drops out at the moment where they're being put on the spot, or counsel for that matter. So to counter Zoom fatigue, you need more breaks and shorter sessions. So I suggest that you're actually going to end up requiring more time overall because you've got to factor in the extra time. And another issue, of course, is time differences. Because if the parties are in widely different time zones, that is also going to shorten your hearing day. Somebody's going to have to get up very early or go to bed very late. And that can make scheduling more difficult. And some of this can essentially cancel out some of the perceived advantages of a virtual hearing. And we've also heard about the green factor. Now, of course, that's a good point, and we are all more conscious now of the environmental impact of flying around the planet. And yet, one can't make a simple assumption that simply resorting to a virtual hearing is a net saving in terms of carbon impact. I mean, what if, for example, there's a due process challenge following the award by the unhappy party, and then there has to be a challenge to the local court? Will everyone have to travel around for that anyway? In other words, you've got to look at the whole picture. You can't simply say, well, we've had X hearing, rather than everyone fly to London, we've had it online. It's too simplistic an assumption. So that's not a decisive factor. I'm going to leave Peter to deal with some of the issues such as technical and costs. But those are my thoughts for the moment.
Thank you very much, Zoe. So finally, for the motion is Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian, and good afternoon to everyone. And once again, thanks a lot to the brilliant organization and for the kind invitation. So let me start off by saying that we obviously note the express acknowledgement that with respect to procedural and case management conference hearings, there's an explicit acknowledgement that that virtual hearings should be the default. And we say that case management and procedural conference management are also and have the same value and same importance as evidentiary hearings. They are both part of the same contentious and formalistic process that is arbitration. And just to maybe touch upon some of the points that were raised by the respondent and the team arguing against the motion. And if you understand correctly, there seems to be a concern with respect to access to justice, the administration of justice, and then the human factor. And I think we can all agree that virtual hearings have managed to avoid delays, disruptions, and adjournments at a time when there was a need for proceedings to continue. And the access to justice and justice itself and the way it's administered, I think we can all also agree that justice need always to be objective and blind. And in a sense, human factor in a sense that gauging whether an arbitrator is bored or the emotions or the feelings of an arbitrator are not necessarily productive for the whole process of the administration of justice. And we've seen, many of us, that the technology which currently stands before us and which is available to us has afforded all of us many opportunities to be able to accurately and adequately gauge the witness testimony. We've seen many new technology which is becoming increasingly much more affordable, and that is often going in line with the economic amortization factor with such technology, which again, let's agree, that is not the case with respect to hotel expenses and travel costs. And allow me also to say that, as I think we will all also agree, that lawyers, counsels more generally, and also arbitrators, and I think more and more experts, do not necessarily have a cheap taste. When was the last time you've held your hearing, or you remember having held a hearing at a motel, or at an ibis, or at a Premier Inn? Those are wasted costs, whereas technology-related costs are more and more amortized and made publicly more available to general public. And because of the technology such as augmented reality, we've seen very recently Facebook shifting its name to Meta. Aren't we all transitioning soon to the metaverse? And aren't we all at some point going to have our own avatars? Many of you know there is a market now akin to the cryptocurrency market. But that aside, we've all seen the features as well and the functionalities of being able to zoom in on the features of a witness. We've seen even technology which helps and assists tribunal to be able to decipher certain accents. And I'm referring to a platform called Cluedo, which I have personally used, and which is extremely helpful and for the purpose of the fact-finding mission of the arbitral tribunal. And with respect to the infamous Zoom fatigue, I would also like, maybe just for completeness, to clarify that the same research, which was conducted by social researchers, have shown that equally, when you are staring for longer periods of time, even in a person setting, to someone, you will psychologically be fatigued. However, the impact that Zoom would have, or any other platform would have, is that you are able to mitigate such a fatigue, which is not actually possible in an in-person setting. And you are able to do so by several options that such platforms more and more offer. And with respect to the time differences, aren't we all engaged in international arbitration? Isn't the beauty of international arbitration the ability to put together participants, stakeholders, parties from all different corners of the world? And yes, it may be true that at times you could have certain parties or witnesses attending from different time zones. But isn't jet lag also an issue, especially when you're traveling for long periods of time to attend a few days of hearings? And again, the issue of time differences can, again, once again, be easily alleviated. As Professor Gary Bourne has put it, arbitral tribunals working together with parties can work together on splitting the inconvenience across parties. And with respect to, once again, issues of fairness, let's look at Article 18 of the UNCITRAL Model Law, which provides, obviously, and we agree with this, that parties are to be treated equally and to be provided a full opportunity to present their case. Similarly as well, if you look at Article 5, 1B, and D of the New York Convention, the right to be heard is also equally emphasized. And this is not to say that conducting virtual hearings hampers such a right. To the contrary, there aren't, to our knowledge, any arbitral award globally which has been set aside as a result of conducting a virtual hearing in the course of arbitration proceedings. And I refer to the very recent ICCA national report on whether a right to a physical hearing exists in international arbitration, and none of the surveyed jurisdiction in that report contained any express provision that such a physical right to a hearing actually exists. To the contrary, we see more and more national legislation as well as arbitral institution rules affording expressly such a right. The UAE Federal Arbitration Law number 6 of 2018 is an example of it. As Gary Bourne had put it, in these post-pandemic days, an entire virtual hearing, let's not forget it, is a hearing. And even prior to the pandemic days, Article 25.2 of the ICC rules, as interpreted by the ICC Secretariat's guidebook, also clarified that the term in person can also mean reference to virtual hearings. Because, as Professor Maxi Scherer put it, in the context of international arbitration hearings conducted in several locations, participants of the hearing, let's not forget it, are not virtual, but they actually really exist. They merely interact with each other using communication technologies. And in the event there could be certain legal or regulatory impediments to conducting virtual hearings, which we say is not the case, allow me also to refer you to the very comprehensive 6-point pathway by the eminent Professor Dr. Muhammad Abdul Wahab. Now, let me take you now to 1996. Some of you might be familiar with the British funk band, Jamiroquai. And back in that time, it was also anticipated that our world is filled with virtual reality. And we're all, and I quote, governed by this love that we have for technology. Now, it is said that the need, again, is the mother of innovation. And that is to say that virtual hearings need not replicate online what is done offline. Again, our witnesses in such a huge number that we often see, are they all necessary? Let us also query as well whether hearings also need to last for several weeks. In the words of Yas Bani Fatimi, and by way of a personal homage to the late Professor Emmanuel Gaillard, I quote that although initially skeptical about virtual hearings, Professor Gaillard had embraced, and I quote, what he called the new normal. And his environmental conscientiousness, which Alex has alluded to, and concern for arbitration costs meant that he hoped that many pandemic practices, such as, of course, virtual hearings, would survive. So this is indeed our opportunity to change also our practices and our behavioral approach to the manner in which justice is administered through arbitration proceedings. Now, going back to the motion, should virtual hearings be the default mode of hearings in the post-pandemic world? We say that virtual hearings are efficient, cost-effective, and secure, in light as well of recent court decisions, and I refer to recent court decisions in Singapore as well as Austria, which have upheld awards held in the context of virtual hearings? The answer is therefore simply yes, given that the beauty of arbitration lies in its flexibility and adaptability to the circumstances. And the pandemic has further evidenced the latter. And by default, it does not necessarily mean, as Alex has alluded to, that the party autonomy and the flexibility of arbitration doesn't allow parties to try and work around solutions that would best fit their needs. Concluding, let's go a little bit back in time to the 18th century with the French philosopher Voltaire, who said that the best is the enemy of the good. And so by that, while there isn't always a best or a perfect option, there is also always a middle way option, and an option that the parties, through arbitration, can always adapt to them. And that is obviously the beauty of virtual hearings, which should be the default and obviously can be adapted to marry and in line with the parties' needs. On that, I conclude my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And finally then, against the motion is Peter.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. And thanks, Sarah. I think I'll just start with, I think I actually agree with your last point in the sense that we do need to find the best option that's available to us. And I think the best option has to be a flexible option, and it adopts both virtual and physical hearings where appropriate. So I think we need to understand the context of why virtual hearings actually exist in the first place. So 2 years ago, we're here on this stage for the Dubai Arbitration Week, and there were no discussions about virtual hearings. There were no debates. It wasn't even something that factored into our discussions because it wasn't something that existed. I think since COVID, we've definitely seen the introduction of virtual hearings, we've seen the adoption of them, and people are really enjoying the process, and it's working, technology is working, and it's fast-tracked this universal adoption of technology in arbitration. What I think we need to be careful of is to understand the context of where this comes from and not to rush into it and jump on the bandwagon too quickly, because there has been an excitement amongst the legal community about technology. And as a lawyer, I'm the first to admit lawyers are very, very reluctant to change. We definitely resist that, and we push back on everything. And I've been fighting with my senior lawyers in my team for years, trying to adopt various technologies and basically evolve our team and our practices. However, when it comes to mandating some kind of virtual hearing or some kind of default option for all hearings, I think we need to be very careful that we're not putting ourselves in one corner and limiting the possibilities of arbitration generally as a flexible and universally accepted method of dispute resolution. So I wanted to start with a question here. So before I go on to my points, if I put to you that the default mode of conferences in the future should all be virtual, who here would agree with that? There you go, 1%. So we're going well. So I think we need to, I enjoy seeing everyone physically. I think it definitely changes the experience. It changes it for the parties, it changes it for the counsel, for the clients, for the witnesses, for the experts. Virtual hearings are great and are a means to an end, and they can work in certain circumstances, and they can be utilized very well where it's appropriate. But I think the point we're making is that they should not be the default going forward for every arbitration, and that's important to remember. So we've already addressed some of the issues of time differences, the green factors, the human interaction. What I'm going to focus on is the technical issues that could be addressed. And one of the things we've identified during COVID is the world is not equal. So technology is great, and it works when everyone has access to it, but not when everyone doesn't. So especially for arbitrations and virtual hearings, there's no guarantee that both parties and all counsel will have the same access to technology, will have the same access to the equipment, will have the same internet bandwidth available in their respective jurisdictions or locations. So we need to keep this in mind when we're mandating certain procedures and technology on parties that they may not be able to access in the first place. Other things that you might want to think about are the video conferencing platforms that sometimes are mandated by various institutions. Sometimes they're not accessible in various jurisdictions, such as the Middle East, China, for instance. There's also a limitation on the quality that you can get in various jurisdictions. So whilst we're very excited and we're going forward and we're progressing very quickly from the technology front, we need to remember that not everyone has this high quality access, and we also don't want to dilute the quality of the arbitration by quickly adopting technology that might be not up to speed or something like that. So then we've got the experience and the fairness of the actual process. So you've got the technology not being available perhaps in different jurisdictions, but you've also got the fact that what happens if it fails during the hearing, and what happens if suddenly for one party in one jurisdiction they can no longer hear what's happening or they can no longer see what's happening. Does that take away the fairness of the process? Does that raise objections to the equality and the access to justice, and then possibly reasons to challenge enforcement down the line? So there's a few issues here that we need to overcome before we can universally adopt these virtual hearings as the default. There's also a lot of time dedicated, time and cost, to actually setting up this arbitration. Yes, arbitrations in general are timely and costly, but when you're running one virtually, you have other considerations like what technology we're using, does everyone have access to cameras, microphones, where are they, how do we get this technology to them? And all of these things add up. And yes, overall, you could possibly see that it might be less costly, but it also could be more costly if you're using the premium providers of all of these services in the arbitration, and you're just going for the best quality, because there's a monopoly at the moment in service providers, for instance. So there are issues with technology that need to be addressed. There's also issues with the trust of the parties. So when you're in a room, physically, the human interaction, you see the other side, you can see what's happening. There's no room for any kind of grey area. When you're seeing a witness on a camera, you don't know who's in a room with them. You don't know that they're not being coached behind the scenes. They might be, they might not be. The trust just isn't there. So you need to be sure that you can trust both parties to act fairly and appropriately in the circumstances before you can adopt these hearings. One of the other issues we think is important to remember is, while yes, the other side have mentioned that costs can be reduced, there's also a chance that costs could be increased because, as we've discussed previously, with the various time zones and the Zoom fatigue, for instance, you could have shorter hearings during the day, so you need more days to actually fit in all of the hearings. That could extend the process out from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, for instance, for a hearing. It could mean that more parties have to dial in different time zones and different days. It can definitely increase the cost rather than decrease it, depending on what kind of arbitration you're running. So it definitely isn't one size fits all. And there's also a danger of duplicating costs where you're preparing all the hard copy bundles, sending them internationally to wherever the parties are, but also doing it virtually as well. So you're not running it very efficiently. And we've seen that in physical hearings too, where as much as we like to adopt the technology and have everything online, we also have boxes and boxes of folders and hard copy bundles just in case as a backup. So it just essentially means we're doing double the work and spending double the cost. Our final point is on enforcement. Whilst the other side have mentioned that there have been some cases recently where they've actually enforced awards issued in a virtual hearing, we're still in a pandemic, and it's still very much at the forefront of our minds. I think we need to be very careful in the future as to how courts are going to treat these awards, and whether courts universally will either accept them or be sceptical about how they were actually obtained, what the process was there fairness involved, I know in this jurisdiction, everyone likes to challenge enforcement by default, so this could just add another element to that argument where you can raise further objections and further arguments as to whether the award can actually be enforceable here. So you need to remember that before we jump into this and adopt these new procedures before it's been tested in the courts. So I think they're the things we wanted to raise. We're not against technology. We love technology. But at the end of the day, mandating a default process of virtual hearings for arbitrations just doesn't seem right at this stage. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thanks to all the debaters. So now in the room, are there any questions for the debaters? Anyone got a comment on their view? Oh, fantastic. Two down here, and online. If you in the chat function or the Q&A, if you want to ask a question, I'll try and pick those up as well.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the panelists, and I want to say that I'm one of those who voted against the motion, and I have 3 or 4 points and I'll try to make them quickly. First, I would like to refer to what Alex said earlier on the matter of having the hearings less aggressive virtually. And this, for me, is a matter that I believe would affect cross-examining witnesses or experts, in which, as counsel, I would prefer putting them under pressure or prefer having an expert in a complicated technical matter that I believe, and I've seen it personally, that would make a difference if they're being cross-examined physically and given the opportunity and the stage to explain such matters in person. Second matter is I would like to refer to what was mentioned in the previous panels, in which one of the junior practitioners asked Dr. Muhammad Salah on what it felt like to attend a hearing in person. And I'm thinking maybe 5 or 10 years down the line, I'm not sure as counsel or as an arbitrator or as a practitioner if I'm going to trust an arbitrator or a counsel who might have to appear in a hearing physically for the first time in their life, if they'd only been involved only in virtual hearings. And I here would like, referring to the human factor that maybe I think Zoe referred to earlier. Also, Sarah, you referred to the maybe turning into alternative reality, which could be a thing in the future and might change the whole game. However, given the current current tools that we have, and maybe because we don't have the same access to technology, like Peter said, across the universe, I think it's too soon to mandate virtual hearings as a default setting in all arbitrations. And I think it only also touches upon the equality and a right to be heard for all for the parties, in which you shouldn't deprive a party from their right to request physical hearings. That's why I believe I'm still in favor of not mandating virtual hearings, although I agree with you. I think we're all in agreement that case management conferences and these kind of meetings can be held virtually with no issues. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Sarah, I think that there's some great points, but I think one mainly about the human factor of being in the hearing room, seeing how someone reacts, is why perhaps virtual hearing shouldn't be the default.
Thanks, Ian, and thank you for your comments. I mean, let me just put things into perspective. When we talk about default, and allow me to clarify, we're not saying that they should be mandated. The difference between a default option, and I think many lawyers here in the room would agree that you tend to have often a general principle that's applicable, typically by default, and that you would have the option, and I think many of the lawyers also in the room would also agree, that typically you would tend to have a principle, and then you may have probably 10, 15, or even 50 sometimes exceptions to it. So what we're saying is they shouldn't necessarily be mandated. In the context of contentious formal proceedings, you cannot necessarily mandate, particularly in the context of arbitration, which is consensually driven. You cannot force the parties in a way. So this clarification, I guess, probably merits a little bit of input on that front, is that what we're saying, because most disputes tend to be also a flow value, and I refer, for example, to the latest ICC statistics report on dispute resolution, where, for example, more than 50% of cases that were either pending or registered in 2020 were below the $30 million mark. And actually, more than 8% of the disputes were actually less than $1 million of value in dispute. So does it mean that for the bulk majority of the cases, which are small to mid-cap, should we have in-person hearings as the default? I would say no. And by default, again, as what Alex pointed out, and also as our colleagues on the other side have pointed out, is you would have the option, in line with the principles of party autonomy and then the features and characteristics of arbitration, which are flexibility and adaptability, to adapt as well to each case. So when we say default, there isn't really any forcing or mandating. They should be the default because also the nature of the industry and the amount in disputes of cases. And typically, there's a correlation between, not always true, but by and large, there's a correlation that amounts in dispute which are typically not high, it means that there are lesser, typically again, with a caveat, lesser sophistication. So for these, indeed, for time and cost efficiency, and for a better and expedited administration of justice, virtual hearings are to be the default, and they are actually the default for emerging tools of arbitration, such as expedited procedures and EA, emergency arbitrator procedure. Now, with respect to the human factor, we're not yet, I guess, in metaverse universe yet. We will be at some point. I think many, I heard, are buying avatars now and trading it. But I would say that the human factor, in my view and based on my experience, is not necessarily lost. I have been involved in proceedings where you could definitely zoom in on an individual and see what the gesture is. You would technically have maybe 2 cameras in a setting where you could see the whole room, just to avoid potential cheating, for example, or to see the hands of the witness and whether there is anyone else in the room. And then you typically have the ability to zoom in and out. So I would say that even in my view, under certain circumstances, technology also actually helps us enhance the human factor. In a sense, you're better able to gauge as well the psychology of the witness.
Perfect. I think we've got a second question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent. So in the spirit of lively debate, our panelists have generously taken opposite positions on the issue of virtual and in-person hearings. And I just wanted to invite comment on another creature seen out in the wild over the past year or so, and that's the hybrid arbitration. What I mean by that is the 3 panelists, members of the tribunal, sit together physically in one location, and the rest of the participants appear virtually. Or a sole arbitrator sits with the experts only, but fact witnesses and counsel participate virtually. Or the parties, their witnesses, their experts, and counsel sit together, but the arbitrators are separate. And the reason I'm focused on that is that it seems to me when all the stakeholders in the arbitral process have their say and their legitimate interests are addressed, you end up somewhere in the middle of this conversation that we're having right now. And I think it's so interesting because I think maybe this is another procedural point that we've all been looking at over the past year, and clients are attuned to it, institutions are attuned to it, and it'll be agreed to, or it'll be addressed by the powers invested to the tribunal through the rules as they change to address these points. So I just wondered, sort of stepping out of your respective positions, whether you had any comment on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Zoe?
In my experience, hybrid hearings actually can be very effective. I mean, as I said in my earlier discussion, it doesn't address the issues around the witnesses, but I think it certainly can help to have arbitrators in the same room with counsel. I mean, in terms of the ability to read the tribunal and interact, it's more productive. But then you're giving up a lot of the supposed advantages of a virtual hearing. You've got all the scheduling issues and maybe the travel and so on. So, I mean, I think it just goes to show that flexibility is in fact the key.
Any more questions? Yeah, one here at the front. Just while we get the microphone over, just give me 1 second. So we've got a couple of comments online. A comment from Sahib is, I do believe that GCC countries' infrastructure to accommodate virtual hearings are the most suitable and capable of the Middle East countries. Yeah, possibly very true. We've had another comment from Assad. We've had repeated power breakdowns in one of the jurisdictions during a virtual arbitration, and it was not a pleasant experience for the arbitrators or counsel. Agreed, it is hard to achieve a level playing field. So that's from online. Yeah, and I think there's a question just behind.
Maybe, Ian, I'm sorry, just maybe to comment on that last point is I would just like to add up that, technical hurdles do occur. And obviously what we say is that they're not unsurmountable. There's always a way, one way or the other, to try and work around it. But unfortunately, more and more, you do have certain parts of the world where accessibility or physical accessibility to a location is often mandated and conditioned upon the issuance, for example, of special authorities' visas and approvals. And those are, let's admit it, are not surmountable. If you're denied a visa, if a witness is denied a visa, well, you're not necessarily able to mitigate that. But in a virtual hearing context, you're always, in a way, work around the technology. So technology's difficulties and hurdles are surmountable, not necessarily the case for example, issues often occurring, such as visas, for example.
So the question back there?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Mina. I agree that there is many advantages of virtual hearings or virtual meeting, but the concept of virtual platforms that they initiated or created due to the need of connection between each other. So I just want to come back to Peter, what he said, that there is a lack of trust or many chance for cheating. I think most of us saw these videos on YouTube that there is a lot of virtual meeting held between, for example, colleagues or whatever. Half they were formal and the other lower part maybe nothing. So it's reflecting that anyone can cheating or anyone can make not the real picture or not the real personality, which is very important and essential element for the arbitrator to identify and to know that this person have trust or no. That's what I'm saying.
Peter, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I think just respect for the process. So I think you need to maintain that level of respect and professionalism for arbitrations in order to deliver high quality dispute resolution. And I think there's a risk there that if you do them entirely virtually all the time, some people won't respect the process, some people will abuse the process, and you won't get the result you're looking for. So you just need to balance that and make sure that everyone that is actually participating is on the same page and that you're not at risk of undermining the process itself.
Should we make this the final question then? Because I know we're standing between everybody, the vote, and then lunch.
Of course. Just a quick comment, well, a few comments actually. And thank you all for the great debate. On the title, the way I read it, it says, virtual hearings should be the default mode of hearings in a post-pandemic world. And default, when you read into any dictionary, means that it is the automatic option absent a choice to change it. So there is no exclusivity or only there. So that's the default, and I think that builds on what Sarah has mentioned earlier. The other point is post-pandemic. I don't see that saying post-COVID. God knows when the pandemic era, be it COVID or otherwise, would end. And in the explanation, it says going forward. Now, we are all in this room conflicted. Why? Because Peter is right. we are normally resistant to change, and that is a condition called metathesiophobia. And lawyers normally like to operate and work in the comfort, the way of things they have been working all through the years. But we forget that there is Generation Z, Generation Alpha. These, when they play together, these young children, they no longer interact physically together. They hold their handheld devices, sit around, playing, each on their own devices, despite being less than 1 meter apart. Now, these people, going forward, look at us very awkwardly, saying, what the hell are you doing in a room full of people when you can be doing that online? And that goes precisely to the point. I, for one, like in person, physically appearing everyone, but that's not going forward. Unfortunately, it's a generational gap. Now, the other point is about a movie called Surrogates, which is a Bruce Willis movie, 2009, where you will have seen that people have their own, unfortunately, robots doing the work when they are staying at home. If you've not seen it, it's quite interesting. I'm beginning actually to think that the movie industry is preparing the world for many things that are coming. But anyway, we may not like that, but the coming generations would. And then finally, I think, basically, which is we are assessing the issue of virtual hearings from the existing technology. 2-3 years down the road, where the pandemic could still be in, technology would have been completely different, with holographic visual projections, people appearing almost physically but in ethereal form. And I think that would resolve many of the issues that we are facing today. And finally, in terms of hybrid, I'm not sure that hybrid hearings are a different creature. I see them as a variant, just as COVID has variants. It's a variant of what we're experiencing today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Although I would say that my daughter saw her grandparents this morning. They arrived from the airport, and she was very much pleased to see them. A lot more pleased to see them than on a Zoom call. So yeah. So finally, then it's time to vote. So if you go in and you don't need to vote again, your vote should still remain in there. It's slido.com, hashtag 019432. If you want to update your vote, if you've been swayed by either side here, for and against, please do update your vote online, and then hopefully the results should be coming through soon. What do you think? Do we think it's been moved?
Which way?
Yeah, and is this another issue with technology? No? Sorry, that's your joke. Sorry. Hey, Kyle, are they any second now? Are they coming through? Well, while we're doing that, I know obviously people were interested at the start to see where people were from. We've people online from Tanzania, Nigeria, Abu Dhabi, Nairobi, Kenya. Oh, fantastic! So welcome to everyone who was online. I hope you enjoyed it. We didn't have too many questions from people online, but hopefully it was informative. Kyle, do we have any results?
Too much traffic.
It's a tie. Okay, well, if there was a technology issue, I'm sure that after lunch that it will. It's moving. Sorry, it's 58 now. Okay, so a very. Okay, so if we take that as a 58 and 42, it means 57-43. Okay, so I guess that would mean, yeah, that Sarah and Alex have managed to shift the votes by a massive 3%. So congratulations. So thanks very much, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the lunch. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers for.
Shall we take? Do you want to take a picture?
Oh yeah.
It would be good to. I remember our picture 2 years ago, so I would like to
That
have
would be fantastic. I'm going to have to dash off.
Ask photographer guy.
Let's do that.
Oh yeah.
That would be really nice.
Excuse me.
Sorry, I thought you were both great.
Can we just get a